This is the first test. Top one is printer paper. Videos I've seen, you gotta get this wet and then peel it off, but let's just start with the peel and see what happens. That's not gonna work very well. Okay. This one is these off-brand Avery labels. Hoping this will come off in just one piece here. So let's see what happens. Oh wow. That's pretty impressive. There are some pieces that came off with it. But pretty decent transfer. What is this? That's probably glue. Yeah, I believe that's just glue. Okay, and then this is clear stickers for laser printers. So there's actually a whole other layer here, and I do think it's leaving it behind here. So let's peel this and see what happens. Okay, that took a lot more with it. Interesting. I'm going to get the printer paper sample wet. I've already started peeling some of this, as you saw before, but I don't have any leverage, nothing to grab here. Okay, we've peeled off the top layer of that paper. We'll get this wet and then see what happens with this next layer here. It's now wet. I'm not going to bore you with this, but this is the process. Come back. So this is after the first rub with your fingers. After that, this is the first layer that came off. This is the second layer. This is when you're rubbing it with your finger. And there's still some on here. Let it kind of dry and just do this a little bit. And we'll come back. A bit more of the finger rubbing. It's not really coming off dry anymore. Let's throw some more water on here. See what happens. You can see little spots that have kind of worn off. Oh no, that's on the surface. That's cool. All right, I'm going to quit messing with it. Let's see what happens here. The color on that's a lot better. I think once you put some poly or something on here, that color will start to pop more. I don't feel anything on the surface really to speak of here. Maybe just a tiny bit. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grab some real fine sandpaper like 1000 grit. Let's go over this, wet sand it, and see what happens. Okay, yeah, you can see I'm starting to take the other material off here. The laser print out, the ink, whatever. So let's stop right there. And let's see what happens. Obviously we've gone too deep there, and it definitely feels different. Okay, this is dried off now. Well, no more of that white film, which I think is just, paper fiber probably. And that's just a reflection that you're seeing there. But you can see there are chunks that did not transfer very cleanly with that cheap label test. And then this is a laser printer, clear sticker laser printer label. And yeah, part of the color, definitely a difference in the texture here. So some of that ink or whatever did not transfer. I might use that if I was going to route this out. So far my gut says this is probably still the best up here on the right, which is the printer one, but it's going to take the most effort. So let's do something else for last here. I'm going to leave all of this white stuff, this white film, again, probably paper fiber. I'm going to go a lot lighter this time, try and just hit the R and this, and then we're going to throw some polyacrylic, and I will leave this here along the top, but leave this film. And let's see what polyacrylic does with it. I think the polyacrylic is going to hold this, hide this stuff. I'll leave that as well. So let's see what happens. And to be fair, on the other two, I will wet sand these, try and keep the same amount of pressure, same effort, same time, and let's see what happens to those. I think that's just going to come right off. Okay, so as soon as I recognized that I had a problem over here, I stopped, right? Well, maybe a second or two after. That happened very quick. Look how that came up. It's actually still, it'll still come up. I can feel it will roll up. And this is even worse. It doesn't come off in strips, but it just comes off in small layers. So you can't wet sand either one of those. That is not going to work. All right. Again, let's hit this with some real light up through here. I decided against the painter's tape method. I didn't want to risk actually altering what's behind here, so I just used my ruler as a straight edge and tried to hit just that little arch on what's the, I guess this is an R, a backwards R. So anywho, yeah, you can see it looks a little bit better. There's still a little bit coming up, but I will say this one feels super, super smooth. Huge difference in texture. That first coat is not completely dry, but I would have to say that it seems to have done a pretty good job of bringing out that color and hiding those errant paper fibers. I'm assuming that's what that is. Let's look at the next one. I think this is just glue. I'm going to grab a razor blade and pry at that a little bit. Let's see what happens, just in case. I wouldn't use that for any kind of a project, nor would I use that really. I think that the paper one seems to work the best. Those paper fibers probably just give up the toner, that laser toner, that much better. I do think that when the colors pop, this one is the best, the labels. So maybe a little bit more tweaking there. I don't know. I'm going to play with this a little bit more. Maybe add a second coat. Hit this with the razor blade. Just make sure that this is indeed, you know, that Mod Podge and not something left behind. Okay, second coat is on. Try not to do the reflections, but it is still drying a little bit, but looks really good. I think that's usable. The other one, if it weren't for the problems with the transfer and the buckling on the edge potentially, I think I'd actually prefer that. The colors do pop better. Let's look at the bear. And actually the colors where this one transferred are the best. They're the deepest, but you lose half the image. So I have done this before. Here's one that I did for my wife. This is 3 coats of poly with a wet sand on it. And initially when I did this thing, it did not look great. It looked very milky, and the photo itself wasn't terribly great either, but I only had one picture to work with. And it was the first time I'd ever tried it, so there were some imperfections here. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm going to do this again. This was kind of a test piece. It's bothering me. So yeah, I got to do this one over again. But the poly came out really nice. It's solid. It's not like we're walking on it. It sits on her desk and just does that all day, every day. Anywho, I hope this is helpful. I'd stick with the paper. And yeah, feel free to leave me some feedback, comments, that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys.